Lipo snob? Bad testing methodology? Horizon shill? Let's find out. This is going to be a follow-up to our previous video. You guys had a lot of really strong feelings about this ESC, and I want to dig in just a little bit deeper. For those who don't know what we're talking about, this is the 2-in-1 223s Arrma ESC, and some people have been having problems where their lipos are hitting low voltage cutoff way too soon. The first thing we need to talk about is how an ESC actually determines when it's time to hit low voltage cutoff. This isn't quite as simple as just watching for the voltage to drop below a certain point and then cutting off, because these lipo batteries are going to drop below that low voltage cutoff pretty frequently no matter what it is due to battery sag. Battery sag is the voltage that the battery drops down to under load, and it can be pretty significant, especially if you've got cheaper batteries or batteries that aren't appropriate for the vehicle you're using. Ultimately, the ESC is going to use a set of battery voltage samples and an algorithm to determine when to kick in that low voltage cutoff. With a lot of ESCs, not only is that voltage adjustable, but it allows the voltage to go pretty low before it hits that cut. These 2-in-1 ESCs don't seem to be nearly as forgiving, but I think that's only part of the story. A lot of the comments that I got in the previous video mentioned having really high low voltage cutoffs that were happening seemingly randomly. And I think that might be a different problem from just having a high LVC or a fairly sensitive LVC. That might be a problem with a batch of these ESCs, but another comment I got frequently was questioning my test methodology, and there might be something to that. Whereas this truck is upgraded and is a bit heavier than stock and has larger tires than stock, the bashing I did when I tested these 3 batteries was just general backyard bashing. I felt that was representative of what most people are going to be doing, but it certainly wasn't worst case scenario, so today we're going to try that worst case scenario. Before we do, I want to mention that this is one battery in one truck with one person driving, and whatever the result is, it's just my result today with this setup, and it isn't necessarily indicative of the result that you get, and it doesn't discount whatever results you've gotten. I'm just one guy messing around, seeing what happens. I'm certainly not a scientist, and none of this is scientific. Before we go out and do this, I want to mention the things that I think are most likely to cause battery sag. The biggest one is going to be poor quality batteries. Cheap batteries have bad quality control, often have high internal resistance, and sometimes have bad cell balance. All of these things can cause low voltage cutoff to kick in early, but they're not the only things that can cause problems. If you have high mechanical resistance in your vehicle, that's going to cause drag, and that's going to put extra load on your batteries and everything else for that matter. Where you bash, as well as how you bash, also play a big part. Running on a really smooth surface and driving really gently is going to cause a lot less battery sag than if you're doing full-on speed runs or bashing in the snow or in tall grass. Temperature also plays a big role. The lower the temperature, the worse the battery's performance is going to be, especially in the beginning of the pack. The battery's age, how it's been taken care of, and a million other factors are going to affect its performance. Your connectors can be problematic. If your connectors are old or worn out on either your battery or your vehicle, that could cause high resistance, which is going to give more apparent sag to the ESC. Running adapters can be problematic. Of course, we're going to go ahead and run an adapter in this test just to make it as bad as possible. I did make this adapter myself. One thing you want to keep in mind is adapters you buy online are typically very poor quality, and I never really recommend using them on a vehicle unless you've made them yourself and you know what they are. Again, making this test as bad as possible while still being realistic. This is a good quality battery, but I've never taken especially good care of it. It's been used singly with other batteries, left discharged, not properly storage charged. It's just a general used battery, but again, it is a good quality battery. It's also about 45 degrees outside, which is great for not overheating your ESC and motor, but it's really bad for your batteries. As when LiPo batteries are cold, they don't tend to have the same output capability, so at least for the first few passes, we're going to get more sag than we would if it wasn't cold out. And then finally, like I said, I'm going to show no mercy on this thing. It's just going to be back and forth, non-stop, as fast as I can until we hit low voltage cutoff, or hopefully I don't crash it into a mailbox. While we're doing this, let's talk about my relationship with Horizon and with all other RC companies for that matter. There are multiple RC companies that do give me some stuff for free occasionally in return for reviewing those things. I personally wouldn't have any problem paying for the products. I mostly just like to get them early, because the earlier you get the product, the earlier you can make a video, and the earlier you can make a video, the earlier I can share that stuff with you, and the more you guys enjoy it. No one pays me for anything ever, and that includes Horizon. That being said, we all have biases, and I am not immune to that. Not paying for something inherently is going to make someone more lenient on that thing. This doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they're trying to shill for the company. It just means they didn't pay anything for it. With all that said, my main allegiance is to you guys. This channel exists so I can share my experience with you and have you share your experiences with me. Because of this, what you hear me say is going to be what I at least consider to be the truth. Again, it's not going to be immune to my own biases because we all have them, but I am never intentionally trying to deceive you in order to make anything look particularly good or particularly bad. With that being said, I'm sure as you've noticed, we've already made quite a few passes here, and we're not experiencing an LVC cutoff yet, but I'm going to keep running this back and forth as fast as I can, as consistently as I can, and when this thing finally hits LVC, we'll go inside and see what the voltage is. Now, if you're enjoying this video, I would really recommend getting subscribed and hitting that bell to get notified. We've got some pretty crazy stuff coming up, including my most complex upgrade and modification ever. All right, guys, there we go. She hit LVC. Let's go see what the battery looks like. Now, keep in mind, like I said, this is basically worst case scenario. I have larger, heavier tires on here. I'm running an adapter, which I did make myself, but does cause higher resistance. This is an okay SMC battery, but it's also fairly old, and it's like 40 degrees outside right now. With all that in mind, after a full pack of back-to-back speed runs, let's see what we got. As you can see here, we're sitting at about 19% or around 3.74 volts per cell, whereas that is a little bit high, and if I put this battery back in the truck, it probably would run for a few more minutes. I don't really consider that to be a problem. Would it be nice if I could get that extra 20% out of there? Maybe, but keep in mind, I would also be taking this battery voltage down really, really low on each pass. I could feel this truck slowing down as I got toward low voltage cutoff, and I'll usually stop before it even cuts off because I can feel when the battery is starting to really sag down badly. So what's going on here? Why am I getting different results from some other people? Am I making all this up? Am I just a shill for Horizon? I'm guessing there's a few different things going on. First of all, the entire RC market is flooded with cheap crap batteries. Basically, all those really inexpensive batteries you buy on Amazon are going to be pretty inconsistent, and it's hard to know what you're getting. These SMC batteries are really good. These Power Hobby batteries, even though this one's pretty old, are also good batteries. This particular Angry Snail battery that I used seems to work really well, though again, it could be inconsistent in what you get when you buy one. I don't think that's the only situation going on here, though. I've had multiple people report random LVC cutouts at really high voltages, and that's going to be different from just having a somewhat higher LVC in the ESC. It's possible with those speed controllers that they simply have a problem with their specific speed controller, and there might be a problem with a batch of speed controllers that combined with that higher LVC is causing people to think that all of the speed controllers have that same problem. It's also worth noting that depending on which vehicle you have, it could be more or less of an issue. This has basically the same size tires as the Big Rock, but if you've got something like the Typhon, it's going to have less stress on the drivetrain and the powertrain simply because it's smaller, lighter, and has smaller tires. That's going to cause less battery sag, and it's going to be a little bit more forgiving to your batteries, especially if you have lower quality batteries. With all that being said, I'm not trying to discount people's individual experiences, and I can completely understand why having a battery work just fine in a bunch of your vehicles, but not in these vehicles, would make you blame this vehicle. That's not an irrational way to feel. Ultimately, excluding defective ESCs, I think these ESCs in general are just more sensitive to voltage sag, and since the market's completely flooded with low quality batteries, that higher sensitivity means a lot of people's batteries are going to have problems with this ESC. Is your battery to blame for that? Is the ESC to blame for that? I don't think it's really either one. I think it's just a compatibility issue. I'd prefer to leave a little bit of capacity on the table as it's better for your batteries, but again, I can understand why people would want to get every ounce of power out of their battery. In conclusion, this obviously has been, and I think will continue to be, a pretty contentious topic, and that's because some people have problems where their batteries are dying in just a few minutes, and it seems like there's a problem with their ESC, while other people are having no problems whatsoever. It's really easy for me just to say, well, buy better batteries, but if all your batteries are working in all your other vehicles, is it really fair for me to say that? I don't know. What do you think? Now that we've looked into this further, you've seen me speedrun this truck over and over, you've seen what the results are. Do you think me saying that you just need better batteries is fair? Or do you still think it's the ESC that's to blame? Let me know down in the comments, and then take a look at FPV in RC cars.